So, like we mentioned, the Vikings really went all over, and one of the directions they went that ended up touching the Byzantine Empire and Constantinople is they went east. What can we say about the 8th century journey east in the river networks that the Vikings did, the Swedish Vikings, the Varangians, as they began to explore the river systems of Russia?
So this was the most surprising part for me when I was first thinking about writing the book and, discovering where the Vikings went. I never, in a million years, it would have never occurred to me that the Vikings went east. But a good way to think of this is the Vikings launched themselves in whatever direction their country is facing. So Sweden goes to the east, Denmark goes down toward Germany, and Norway goes England and the New World. So there's a Viking named Rurik who goes east and manages to set up an encampment on this lake called Staraya Ladoga.
Which is a launch pad to both the Volga River, the Dnieper River.
Yeah, and these are major river systems in the east that take you all the way down to the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. Because the Vikings, such seaborne people, they can sail up rivers. This allows them access to the caliphates in the east and to the Byzantine Empire, where they, being Vikings, immediately decide to attack the city. The Byzantines essentially set the Sea of Marmara outside of Constantinople on fire and burn up all the Viking ships. So then the Vikings decide, okay, we can't take Constantinople, so we might as well join them if we can't beat them. And they end up as probably the most famous guard in Byzantine history, the Varangian Guard. Varangian means the men of the oath, the men who've sworn an oath. This is kind of an analog of the Praetorian Guard in ancient Rome. They were famously loyal to the throne, but not necessarily to the person sitting on the throne. They are major power players. The last of the great Byzantine emperors, Basil the Bulgar Slayer, forms them in the late 900s, and they're there with the history all the way up until the end of it. In fact, many of our famous Vikings, Harald Hardrada, serve in the Varangian Guard. If you go to Constantinople today, inside the Church of the Hagia Sophia, on the second floor, there's a marble balcony, and on the railings, you can find Norse runes that are carved in by Varangian guards who were bored during a particularly long sermon in a language they didn't understand, but they had to stand there.
So that's a fascinating thing, which is the Varangian Guard guarding the emperor of the East Roman Empire is made up initially for quite a bit of time of Vikings.
Yeah.
I mean, like speaking of pragmatic, they just integrate into everything.
Yeah.
Now, eventually, the Varangian Guard became less and less Viking over time.
Yeah.
But this whole, you fast forwarded the story, we should mention that Stare Ladoga in 753 AD is when it was established, opening the connection to the two rivers, and they began trading on the rivers and establishing more stable states along the rivers, including the Kievan Rus in 862, 882, where the Varangians, so it's the Swedish Vikings, they took Novgorod, they took Kiev, and they established the Kievan Rus there. And that is what led to the connection to the Byzantine Empire, where they started to, again, the Vikings went from being Vikings, they go through this process of trading and then establishing a state. Now they're doing treaties of different kinds, and they're also waging or trying to wage war, and going all the way to Constantinople and having a deep admiration for Constantinople, enough to then begin to dream of sacking Constantinople.
Yeah, I mean, once they're alerted to the wealth that's there, Vikings being Vikings, they show up.
Can you speak to the Greek fire? So this was 941 and 944 when they tried. And then Greek fire was this technology developed by the Romans.
We don't really know what it was, Greek fire. It was a form of napalm, obviously. We have the ingredients, what made it up, naphtha and oil and things like that. But it was this very flammable material that would ignite on contact. So the Byzantines would fill it into clay pots and then throw the clay pots. As soon as it's exposed to oxygen, it would start burning. They also had siphons. They would carry like flamethrowers on their back, and they would just spray it at enemies. And the real devious thing about it is that if you launch this clay pot at a ship and the material, pooled across the wood and then dripped off into the water, being oil, it would float on top of the water and continue to burn. So that if you were a sailor and you jumped off the ship because it's on fire and jumped into this oil patch that's on fire, you'd be coated with it and you'd burn underneath the water. It was a horrible way to go. So this was a state secret, closely guarded secret, so closely guarded, it remains a mystery to this day of what exactly it was.
Which is incredible, right?
Yeah. But in the 944 attack on Constantinople, I mean, the Vikings are coming on their ships. They brought these ships from Sweden. I mean, that's crazy. They're in the Black Sea. They've sailed. And they kind of swarm at the Byzantines. The Byzantines launch a bunch of decrepit old ships toward them that have Greek fire on them, and that turns the tide. But the Byzantine emperor so appreciates the strength of these horrifying Vikings that he forms a bodyguard of them.
And hence we get, just a few years later, again, tried to sack Constantinople and then join them.
Yep.
The Varangian Guards in 988 with Basil II and Vladimir. They make Varangian Guard into an institution, and then the word of mouth spreads that this is a real career path for the Viking, is to join the Guard.
Yeah, that's right. Because not only do you get paid you get compensated very well, obviously, for defending the emperor, particularly if you do a good job, but you also have opportunities because the emperor sends you, let's go attack, this tribe, and you get to keep whatever you take. So there's tremendous amounts of war profiteering you can accomplish. And the other great river system, the Volga, that brings you to the great enemy of the Byzantines, the Abbasid Caliphate, and they had a lot of trading links with the north. So you get things like fur and amber, lots of slaves from the Islamic world going up. You even have, in a Swedish coin hoard, there's a Buddha that's been found. I mean, in Sweden.
Yeah. So these networks of trade, how incredible are they with geography? Right, you can transform your understanding of land from the geography of the land to the geography of the river networks, because the way they raid and then invade and then conquer England is through the rivers. It's an incredibly different way of seeing the world.
Yeah. And if you look at the kingdoms the Vikings created, and I'm thinking particularly of like Eric Bloodaxe in York, he's controlling parts of Ireland, parts of Scotland, Wales, England. Like that doesn't make sense unless you're a Viking. That also added tremendously to the terror that the Vikings brought, because, I mean, you should probably be a little careful with absolute statements here, but I can't think of a major European city that's not on a river, which meant now with the Vikings, because they could travel up, rivers, that's shallow rivers, and then carry their boats whenever everything was on the table now, even hundreds of miles inland is on the table.
At an incredible speed, much faster than the land armies. It's terrifying. You're living in a constant state of fear.